I would like to attempt showing you the other side of Pakistan, which is the less talked about Pakistan, and which is beyond this bad press that the lens through which we report, and which journalism, with the world of journalism, sees Pakistan. So I want to take you into a very visual kind of a presentation where you will see visuals and videos and images, and then you can just tell me how you feel about it. Okay, so this image is from the northern part of Pakistan. It's from Azad Jammu and Kashmir, and this valley is called Neelam Valley, and you can see like it's very green, and on top you can see the clouds. Like when you go to these parts of Pakistan, you can actually feel clouds going, you know, through here, through your head. So it's like the feel of this place is very green. It's foliage, and you can feel the vapors in the air.
Thailand. Is it?
Yes.
Mountain?
This is from Kashmir.
Kashmir.
This is Shangri-La. This is also northern Pakistan. This is from Skardu. You can see the still water. It's a resort. People go there to spend, you know, their vacations.
Nothing
Honeymoon
cool.
couples usually go there.
Nothing for.
It's a pagoda house.
It's like a what you can say, a hill station, or it's a place for vacation. So
Oh.
people go spend time over there. It's also in northern Pakistan. Okay, so this is one of the most beautiful lakes found in Pakistan. It's Saif ul Muluk. This is in the Kagan Valley, which is also in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa, Said's province. And Saif ul Muluk, this lake is famous because of a lot of legends. Now because I have visited this place and I have seen it with my eyes, it's more beautiful than the picture shows. It's like still water. You feel that there is glass, and you're looking through the glass, and sometimes you want to step over it, feeling that this is like really glass. So because of the beauty of this place, people have made stories about it. Like there are lots of legends that people still, like people who live over there, they believe in. You know, sometimes when you want to make stories and you want to believe in them, so they say that when there is a full moon night, fairies come here to to bathe in the water, which is of course a story. But a lot of people believe in it. People who go there, they stay there, they say that, oh, I saw a fairy today, because they're hallucinating, because they're imagining these things because of the beauty of this place. So these three images, I just wanted to show that this is the northern Pakistan, which is a beautiful side of Pakistan. Now I will take you to urban Pakistan, which is the cities of Pakistan. These are two videos. On the left side, there's a video from Lahore, which is a city of, you know, very old architecture. And the architecture dates back into the era of the Mughal Empire. You can say the buildings that I will show you, they were established in the 17th and even 16th, 17th century. So you will see that. And on the right side is my city, Karachi. This building that you see over here, it's basically the landmark building of Karachi. There's a flag of Pakistan over here. And this is the mausoleum or the tomb of the person who created Pakistan. We got our independence from India in 1947, and the person who formed Pakistan is buried in this tomb. So this place, this building, you will see it in this shot also in Karachi. And this is how Karachi is known by this building. So I'll just play the first video of Lahore for you. just play. I will play bits of it. This is Karachi. That's the building that I was talking about. Oh, sorry.
What's that about?
It's just part of it.
I'm sorry.
Thank you.
Is it mosque?
It's a tomb. It's somebody is buried inside.
Oh.
A major figure?
I told it like when you were outside. Like we call him father of the nation. Qaida Muhammad Ali Jinnah. We got our independence from India in 1947. The person who led the movement for that, he is buried in that.
Oh.
So this is Karachi. About Karachi, I will tell you something. Like Pakistan overall population is 200 million. Say we were discussing. It's a small country. I'll show you the map. If you look at the land, the area of land that we have, 200 million is a lot for that. Like we are a very thickly populated country, and Karachi alone has 20 million people in it.
Whoa.
And it might be more than that. So I was just reading last night. Karachi is the second most largest populated cities of the world. The first is Shanghai, and Karachi is the second one. Yeah.
Smaller than Albania.
Wow.
Karachi.
Okay, so I'm just saying that like 20 million people. So the kind of city that I come from, it's like
The quantity is not the
Okay, so I was saying that like it's because of coming from a mega city, cosmopolitan city. It's loud, it's complicated. There are so many kind of diversities of people living over there. I will show you a map which will explain what kind of diversities we have in Pakistan.
And you also belong to Karachi, you.
Who?
You.
I told them.
Yeah.
They know. Yes.
Oh, that's the Kashmir you can find.
Okay, so this is the map of Pakistan. So this small country has 200 million people in it, and I will just show you like this is this area, Sindh. It's close to Arabian Sea, and this is where Karachi is. Karachi is here in the south. It's very hot part of Pakistan. The northern areas are the areas where I was showing you pictures of mountains and all that. Lahore is in this part, the cultural city. And Lahore is very cultural because it's close to India. On the border we have India. So the kind of architecture and everything that we find in Lahore and Punjab, it's the culture of India.
Where is it shows where the side comes from.
Where is it?
I will show you because that is the most important part. Relax. On this side we have Balochistan. Balochistan does not have that much population. It is a long piece of land, but it's not that much populated also. And it's not that developed also. And it
Is it
shares a
tough
border.
terrain?
Sorry?
Is it tough terrain? Is it rocky or?
It's a complicated area. It's a complicated area. It shares the border with Iran and Afghanistan. So we have a cultural influence of Iran and Afghanistan on everything over there. If we go on top, I can't point from there, but you can see KPK.
Shall I carry you up?
Okay, you can see KPK. KPK is a short form of Khyber Pakhtunkhwa. So this is where Saeed comes from, and okay. So FATA is another part, and FATA is some area where Saeed will give you a presentation about that part in detail. But KPK has the biggest city, Peshawar. It has a different kind of a culture. I will show you some music from Peshawar later. So I've shown you a video from this part Punjab and this part Sindh, like Lahore and Karachi. And I showed you pictures of the mountains from Said's area, KPK. I still have to show you something from.
So these are provinces, the Sindh, Balochistan, Punjab. These are 4 provinces of.
They are called provinces, like just like America has states, we have provinces. So you can say that like this is one state
Actually,
and
which
one
ones
state.
are provinces again? Sindh, Balochistan, Punjab, and
KPK.
KPK and Gilgit-Baltistan also. This is a new province.
so there are 5.
This is
So,
This is a new one.
Noreen, is the federal system going on?
No, we have our provincial systems as well. Like everything is controlled by the federal government, which sits in Islamabad. But we have like provincial divisions as well. Like Sindh, there is a Sindh government.
I understand, but the
So-
country is organized in federal system.
It's a federal
Yes,
system.
Fatah is
But you
not a
have a prime
province.
minister.
FATA is a troublesome area. Said, would you like to shed some light on FATA?
You know what? Let's not do that. Why
Yeah.
don't you go ahead? Because
Okay.
Saeed has his own presentation.
Because FATA, it's something that
Another
it
special
requires some
status.
explanation, so we will talk about it
Okay,
later.
it's just
On
something
top we have
special.
China. So that's why the culture of Gilgit-Baltistan and Kashmir is slightly overlaps with China because we share a border with them.
And
Yeah, the
if,
border is
if the provincial governor elected by the central government, the provincial governor.
We have a voting system for the provincial government. I think we'll talk about the governments because I think you need to know about the diversities first. We'll talk about that later. Okay. Okay. So these, I just wanted to show you what kind of people live in Pakistan. Because a lot of people here get surprised when they look at me and they say that you look Indian and you don't look Pakistani because they think that this is how Pakistanis look. Pakistanis are very diverse. From north, south, east, west, you find all sorts of Pakistanis. These are traditional pictures. Like these girls, they are from Sindh. So the kind of dresses that they are wearing, it's Sindh. But if you come to Karachi or some Hyderabad or some other cities of Sindh, you will find nobody wearing these. You will find them wearing this or maybe some other forms of clothes, but not this elaborate. This picture is from Kailash Valley, and these people, they have their own system and they wear this kind of headgear and everything. It's a very beautiful, colorful thing, but this is up in the mountains. This is not a part of everyday life for us. So you can say that in ethnic variety, we have Sindhi, Punjabi, Balochis, Pashtun, Kashmiris, Hazara, Balti, and there are more, but there was space for only this much to write. And in religious, we have Muslim, Christians, Hindus, Sikhs, and Parsi. There are Baha'is, and there are 2 more, I think, religions which I have missed, but like these are the major ones.
What is Parsi religion?
So it comes from India. Parsi is another religion from India. Food.
Aha.
Okay, so our food. I showed you the neighbors of.
Eat meat.
Yeah.
Go on, eat.
I showed you the neighbors of Pakistan just because I wanted to explain how dress, how food, everything is influenced by our neighbors. This dish over here is chapli kebab. This comes from KPK and it's influenced by Afghani food. So this is like they make some barbecue kind of meat and it's eaten like that or with some bread or something like that. This comes from Afghani influence. This is a dessert which is my favorite, and if I will get a chance, I will make it for you guys. It's called Shahi Tukda, and in English you can call it like some royal dessert. Okay, so it's made of bread, milk, nuts, and some very sugary, saucy.
We want
things.
some.
Yeah. Okay, you'll get it. This comes from the influence of India.
Roti.
Yeah, the Mughals used to make it. The emperors used to make it. This is a bread which is done with some very fattening oil. And it is in layers and it's very delicious and people have it for breakfast. It's called a paratha. This also comes from India.
This is not
Different from that.
Yeah.
How is it different?
It's
from
more
that?
delicious than naan. I will show it to you when you come to my house on a party. Okay, this food is like the daily diet in most of Pakistan usually. Like you have 2-3 curries, you have rice, you have some vegetables, and you have a chapati. This is like plain bread without oil. Celebrations. Pakistanis are very colorful people. So their celebrations are huge, just like India, you can say. And this is a Pakistani wedding where the bride and her friend, actually her friend is trying to make her dance. The bride is just going around with this. This occasion is different from this occasion. Our weddings are very elaborate. We have like 5 days of wedding, sometimes 10 days of wedding. They go on and on and on. And usually, like 3 of my sisters are married.
Better not divorce.
They don't. 3 of my sisters, they got married, and what happens is like the entire cousins and family, they come to your house to stay. And you're cooking for them every day, and they are like having a party at your house. It's like that. So this event is called Mehndi, in which the bride has to put something on her, like there's a pattern that they put the henna on the, and then she prepares for the other day, which is the next day. This elaborate dress that this girl is wearing is the traditional bridal wear for Pakistani girls, and you can see the groom. He looks like a royal prince. Truck art. Okay, our art is like very elaborate. Like you can have woodwork, you have silver work, you have this mirror kind of work, you have this thread work also. But I will talk about truck art because like this kind of art you can see over here. It slightly shows you. This is truck art. Well, this thing is called a rickshaw. It's a common means of traveling in Pakistan. On if you want to, it's not very safe.
And cities.
You can see it's a 3-seater. It's not very safe. It's a 3-wheeler also. People just sit over here and they just pray that they reach home safe.
Yeah.
But it's very popular because it's very cheap.
It's a tax, kind of taxi.
But a cheaper
Found
taxi.
in India.
Taxi is more expensive. So this,
everywhere.
I will tell you about truck art. Like usually the buses and trucks in Pakistan, they look like this. Because the traditional people, they just, started painting like, because there is no means of artistic outlet. So they started making their trucks beautiful and buses beautiful. From a closer look, their artwork looks like that. It's done with paint brushes, colors, and some kind of metal silver thing. This art has become so popular in the West for one reason, because it's very quirky. Now these guys, what they do is they make some patterns of, like here you can see a fish. Sometimes they make some birds, peacocks. Sometimes they make flowers. Sometimes they make faces of girls. So here you can say that this guy must have, this is like his beloved or someone, like he's made his eyes. And here he has written, in Urdu it's fashion ki diwani, and in English you would call it like somebody who is crazy about fashion. A girl who is crazy about fashion. So because of this quirkiness, this art has become really popular in the West, and now people are painting their bags with it, their shirts with it. This is called truck art. Okay, I was talking about music from KPK. I will play this video. This is some instrumental. It's like a folk instrument, and that is a tabla. I think this one is Indian. This is a folk instrument from KPK. There's another video that I'm going to play, which is music from Punjab, and it has some Sufi touch, and then I will tell you what Sufi touch is, what Sufism is. This is from Punjab.
This sounds Indian.
Yeah, so it's a mix, you can say. It sounds like
Very
Indian.
popular.
Because of the instruments, it sounds Indian.
Me know Punjab on both sides.
So India is also Punjab.
So the thing that he's playing, it's also a folk instrument. It's called a chimta. This is in Punjabi language.
Very popular.
Saraiki, I think Saraiki.
People in the two Punjab speak it.
On this set, you can see the diversity of all sorts of Pakistanis. You can see like there are 2-3 things that you can notice, like the language, which is from Punjab, and then the instruments. There was a dholak, and there was the long thing that he was playing. It's a chimta. These are folk instruments, and then you can see the variety of Pakistani. There's all sorts of people, like from urban. You can see the guy was playing the instrument, like he was clapping those 2 things, metal bars. This is the rural area look. This is the rural Punjab look. But the girls, you can see that they are urban centers, Lahore look. So it's like you can see all, and these guys are like you see variety of people like that. Okay, Sufism I was talking about. I think people who know stuff about Turkey, they know that Sufism has been in the region. But I will talk about Sufism's influence on subcontinent, Pakistan, India, this region. So Sufism is basically it's a school of thought which practices a certain form of Islam, which believes in stressing on harmony, humility, compassion, and spirituality. Now, Sufism believes in making yourself pure and not getting into the business of other people. It believes in the fact that I should first make myself pure, and for that I should have to be humble. I have to respect other people, I have to be compassionate with them, and because I am not perfect, so I cannot judge the other person. And it discourages discord, division, and arrogance. The picture that you see is it's from my province, Sindh. This is a Sufi saint, Shah Abdul Latif Bhittai, his mausoleum like that. He's buried in this. In Pakistan and India also, all through the land, you find many shrines like this. When these people came to this region, they preached humanity. They told people not to fight. They told them to accept each other. So before Pakistan was pulled into this war of terror, we had only this form of Islam in Pakistan. But now it's complicated. Now different factions of Islam are fighting with each other. Yes.
So this belongs to Shia or Sunni?
So this is a Sunni school of thought, but it's tolerant towards Shias, as opposed to there is another school of thought which is not tolerant towards Shias.
Is this an old building? Are these buildings usually really old?
This is like in somewhere very village, like remote area. It's a very old building, yes. Okay, now I would like to just tell you like people who are part of everyday life nowadays in Pakistan. On the left you can see this woman. She used to be the foreign minister of Pakistan in the previous government, Hina Rabbani Khar. She was in her early 30s when she became the foreign minister. She was not among the youngest foreign ministers, but the only female foreign minister maybe of the Muslim world. The woman in the middle, she was the speaker of the National Assembly in Pakistan in the last government. Her name is Fahmida Mirza. Speaker of National Assembly, like the way we visited Maryland Senate, the guy who was the president, this is the same designation. with that guy. She was the speaker. Okay, I will talk about him later. This guy is one of the most respected philanthropists of Pakistan. He has helped so many people. What happens is like sometimes people have babies, illegitimate babies. They want to throw them away. His organization, what they do is that they have a kind of a cradle outside, and there is a message written on it that if you want to abandon a baby, if you cannot take care of it, just put it in this cradle, we'll take care of it. And he has been taking care of millions of babies like that.
Wow.
This man is very huge, and I respect him a lot.
What's his name?
Abdul Sattar Eidi. You can Google him and you can find out about him. He is larger than life. He's a legend.
His
Yeah.
organization has hundreds of ambulances for.
The ambulances that he has made a world record for those. Like I think this is the largest ambulance network in the world that he has, and it is all only for donation money because people love him. This woman, her name is Aisha, and she is a fighter pilot in Pakistan Air Force. So
Is she the first female?
when she became the fighter pilot, she was the only one. But now I've heard news of more of people joining. But she was the first one who became very famous.
And she targets Taliban.
Don't take it there. This guy is Imran Khan. He is a politician of the largest opposition party right now, Pakistan Tehreek-e-Insaf. He used to be a cricketer in the previous days, and
The World Cup winning team of Pakistan.
yes, he won the 1992 Cricket World Cup because of his leadership. His leadership has a very good proven record of like whatever he gets into. He has made a charity hospital for cancer patients. He does not like in Pakistan. It's very seldom that you find a politician who has a clear record. He has a clear record, and right now he is giving a hard time for the current civilian government to overthrow him because a lot of young people follow him.
Is that Imran Khan?
This is
And
Imran Khan.
he's
I want also to see his
graduate.
wife because he has a beautiful wife
He just got
journalist.
married.
I have not placed her over here because
What's her name?
Why are you not talking about
Reham Khan.
Reham Khan.
Ghaniza Bhutto.
who told you I'm not talking about her? How can I not talk?
Okay,
about her?
I was waiting
This is-
for, I just want to make a short question about the woman
Kenara
who was the
Wankar? Yeah,
foreign
sure,
minister.
sure.
You said that she was 30 years old and being foreign minister.
30 something, yeah, 33, 34.
We have also example like that, young woman, beautiful woman, they make it minister of integration, minister, foreign minister, they go abroad and they see men and men see them and they say, okay, this country is developed, they have to the top.
Like propaganda.
But the thing is, does this woman have real power in the position that
So I don't know about Hirana Wali Khan, but I can talk about other women who were really powerful. Like she is not charismatic because of her,
No, I'm not just speaking about charisma, but real powers. Are they commanded by men or
I'm
they
just
have
saying that like she is not a good example of what you kind of character you're talking about. But we have many women like that. Femida Mirza is one like that. She has power.
Benazir Bhutto.
So I have to talk about that. You have to
must
keep my
talk about
mystery
that.
alive. We have very powerful women, but this one is not a good
Not
example.
that.
Okay, this guy, his name is Gibran Nasir. He is like 26, 27 years old. He's an activist who's working for creating an awareness in Pakistan, in the society of generally for people against. He's running a campaign against extremist mosques in the country, which is a very dangerous area. Nobody from my generation, nobody from my older generation has, because a lot of people disagree with the kind of curriculum that is taught at several mosques at madrasas, but nobody has the courage to challenge it. He is running a campaign where he is asking the government to arrest a guy who's running a mosque in the capital of Pakistan, Islamabad, which is the Red Mosque. And he's saying that I'm going to run this campaign, and there are people who are following him also, they are protesting with him. I'm not going to stop until and unless you arrest this guy, because he is the one who is creating division in Muslims, and he's telling people to be sympathetic with Taliban. So he is running an anti-Taliban campaign, and he is a real hero.
And he's still
See
alive.
something? I think
Up
that
to now.
this is a tall guy, right?
Are you talking about Imran Khan or this
No,
guy?
the guy on top.
He is fairly tall, yes.
Yeah. Just recently, I saw a video. I'm pretty sure it was him and our fellow from last year, Tahira.
She's
she
in that,
was
yeah.
next to him.
Yeah.
Tahira Jazim.
Yeah.
Tahira was next to him.
Tahira is in his campaign, yes.
Yeah.
She is with
Yeah,
him.
but this is like in the last 3 weeks.
Yes, Tahira goes to every campaign that they,
Yeah.
every protest that they hold in Islamabad.
Yeah.
Wow.
Okay. Now these are some glamorous people of Pakistan. You can see
These are Pakistanis?
Yes. The other Pakistan. That's why this is the other Pakistan. Okay. This one. This is a woman.
Oh, she's blonde. You have blondes in Pakistan?
I think she has dyed her hair.
Oh.
Okay, so let's begin with us. Sana Mir is Pakistan's female cricket team's captain. She plays. This is Sharmeen Ubaid Chinoy. Sharmeen Ubaid Chinoy got the first Oscar for a Pakistani film. She is a filmmaker. This girl is a dancer. Her name is Sohai Abru. She does classical dance. She is brilliant. She is very young. This woman over here, she is the hottest model of Pakistan, Iman Ali. And this guy is the hottest model of Pakistan, male model of Pakistan, Fawad Khan.
Obvious.
Who's making Indian films also now.
And he is a Bollywood. So Fawad Khan has now won an award for an Indian film in Priyali's country. So he is going beyond politics.
Oh.
For me.
Who was asking about Benazir Bhutto?
I was. I love her.
So now moving from lighter stuff, now I'm just stepping into some serious stuff. I will show you some people who have been larger than life and who have been faces of resistance in the environment that we have in Pakistan. I will just give you a rough background of the governmental, the political system, how it has been running. So it has constantly been a struggle between the civilian governments and the military leadership and military establishment, you can say. What has happened is that Pakistan has never had never got a chance. We are like 67 years old, something like that, and we never got a chance of having a stable democratic government which could complete 1 year's term. One term, I mean, it's a 5-year term. 5-year term. So when it was my parents were young, at that time, when I was young at that time, and like now my younger brother, he's in his youth, early youth. So nobody has seen that time where we could see one government could stay in power and nothing could happen to it. What happened was, like, on corruption charges, they were thrown out of power, and I think Somsa can relate to it. And there would be a military coup, and some military dictator would come and they would prove it to the people that we are better than the previous governments and all that. This woman, her father was given capital punishment by a military dictator. He was killed, yeah. But this is called a judicial murder in Pakistan, because people, majority of the people believe that he was wrongfully, executed. This woman, she has been the prime minister. She had the chance of being the prime minister twice in Pakistan, the female prime minister, and after that she because there was this conspiracy that the government was corrupt. She was living in another country and she was running a campaign from there. The third time she came to Pakistan and she was assassinated by the Taliban. So I'm going to show you some, like this picture is from her last, in Rawalpindi at Liaquat Bagh. She had a huge rally where she addressed people, and this picture is one of her last clicks. I'm going to show this video, but I will just play one part where you can see how charismatic she is. You will understand.
We already know. She's amazing.
You have led an outstanding life. Gives men and women equal rights. Fully of Zulfikar Bhutto that you under certain limits to your actions because you're a woman. When we were fighting for our right was that Zulfikar Ali Bhutto's talk. I think religion is a personal matter and each person must interpret it for themselves. So what I'm telling you is my interpretation as a Muslim. And for that, I believe that God
like
part of his dreams. So the woman, and because it's a Muslim country? Partially, yes. Because I was Zulfikar Ali Bhutto's daughter, I was given a great degree of respect and a great degree of support. And my father's followers saw in me the embodiment of his dreams. So they rallied around me. But it also had to do with Pakistan's liberal tradition. When we were fighting for our independence, women used to come out on the street and demonstrate against the British, who were then part of our subcontinent as the colonial rulers. So part of it was that I was Zulfikar Ali Bhutto's daughter, but part of it was also because of this very strong liberal constituency in Pakistan ever since its independence.
And would you say that according to the Quran, you can, as a woman, have higher education, study, become active in politics? Or is there a
Of course, I think that religion, first of all, I think religion is a personal matter and each person must interpret it for themselves. So what I'm telling you is my interpretation as a Muslim. And for that, I believe that God gives men and women equal rights. In fact, Islam goes beyond Christianity in that Islam gives inheritance to women, the right to divorce to women, the right to child custody to women, whereas Christianity is silent on these issues. So I think that this is really a social charter. What is marriage in Islam? It's a contract where both parties say we are coming together to have a family and these are the terms by which we will live together. So I think that Islam really is a religion of liberation, but that there is a mafia of tribal thoughts, patriarchal thoughts, the traditional society which has used religion to maintain the principles of a bygone era.
You then very spectacularly swept to power in 1988. You became one of the youngest leaders in the world, but mainly you became the first female prime minister of a Muslim country. However, and I think that was a disappointment for many, you then were ousted from power on corruption claims. And then in your second tenure as Prime Minister, you were ousted again on corruption claims. And now, as has been in the headlines, you have been, in your absence, convicted on corruption claims. What you counter to these claims?
These corruption claims are all bogus, and the people of Pakistan have already rejected them. Because ever since our country was founded in 1947, the establishment has used corruption charges to eliminate popular leaders. So I am not the first of the popular leaders to have been charged with corruption, and I am not the first of the popular leaders to have been sought to be eliminated through the judicial process. It pains me when people say I've been convicted. A citizen gets convicted after a fair trial. The man who sat as judge in my case, his brother is a member of the ruling party. His father killed my father, sentenced my father to death. And he himself was Deputy Attorney General for General Zia, who kept me behind for more than 5.5 years in prison. So the man is partisan, he's politically committed. He was nothing more than a political handmaiden for the Islamists to eliminate the liberal alternative and to secure their own stranglehold on Pakistan. The people of Pakistan have rejected these charges. And I hope that the Supreme Court of Pakistan will withstand the pressure of the Islamists and give justice to me. And it's not just justice to me. If it was just my fate, perhaps I'd be less concerned. But it's the fate of Pakistan. This is really taking Pakistan and throwing it to the fundamentalists.
What would you...
Wow.
So this interview kind of sums up the problem of Pakistan.
What
This is the
year was
problem.
this? Do you know?
I could not see from the video. I just got it from the YouTube. But this is the crucial problem of Pakistan, that we are struggling with a system where the common man is made to believe that democracy is not good for him because he cannot and civilian leaders who come to power are thrown out because military is too powerful. So we are still a security state.
It didn't help that she married that guy.
Yeah. He also became the president later on. Okay.
Mr. 10%.
Mr. Yes, Mr. Tenman. This guy is Salman Taseer. He is also from Benazir Bhutto's party, Pakistan People's Party, which is the largest political party of Pakistan. The woman that he is sitting with, okay, Salman Taseer was also assassinated. The woman that he is sitting with, her name, she's a Christian, and her name is Asia Bibi. And his story is about blasphemy laws. So Pakistan's blasphemy laws were made by the British when we were colonized by the British in India, and nobody dares to speak against the blasphemy laws because you are scared that they might, convict you and they might kill you because you have been disrespectful to the Prophet of Islam. So the law is like nobody can talk bad about the Prophet of Islam, and if you say something against it, you are going to be killed. You are going to be like, it's the law in Pakistan. And this was made by the British and it's still in order. What's happening right now is that people are using these laws to use their influence on small communities. For instance, like if I am powerful in my area, and if there is a Christian woman or a Hindu woman, she is poor and she does not have any power, and I want to teach her a lesson because I've got some enmity with her. So I might tell people that, oh, she has burned some pages from Holy Quran. And then if I say this, I can take her to court and everybody would believe it. And they can be killed. Salman Taseer is the only brave man in the entire history of Pakistan who said that this law should be changed. And his guard just shot him because he thought that he is just disrespecting the religion.
He was governor.
He was governor of Punjab.
Yeah, and that woman that he's sitting next to, Asia Bibi, is a Christian.
She's a Christian.
And she's still in jail.
She is.
And that what Noreen just said exactly happened to her. Somebody accused her without any evidence whatsoever. She's been in jail.
And the killer of the governor is a hero now.
Yeah.
He is in jail, but he is hero.
And Salman Taseer has a very nice love story across the border. He is in love. I mean, he used to be in love with one
Atish
of
Taseer's
India's
mother.
Yeah, Atish Taseer's mother. Tableen Singh, she's one of the very good journalists in India, and together they have a son, Atish Taseer, who's also now a journalist and writes really well. And he writes about these issues.
Okay, so this video that I'm going to play is Salman Taseer's daughter, Sheher Bano. She is a journalist herself. What she has to say about his story.
I mean, I feel like everything I do now is just with him in the back of my mind, wanting to make him proud, wanting to carry on his work, and keep that last name, Taseer, flying high. My story begins in November 2010, when a poor and illiterate Christian woman, Asia Noreen, was sentenced to death for allegedly committing blasphemy. My father was the governor of Punjab at the time, and he took me with him to visit this woman, Asia, in jail. After we went to visit her in jail, my father held a press conference in which he said that this woman, like the thousands before her, had most likely been unfairly accused of blasphemy, and that Pakistan's blasphemy laws are vague and open-ended, and that they required an amendment to prevent such misuse from happening.
A lot of people said to me that, you're making a mistake, don't do it. And I said no. If I don't stand up, then other people who think like me won't be able to stand up.
It seems in Pakistan that if you believe in something, you have to be willing to die for it. Because on January 4th, 2011, my brother Shayyar's 25th birthday, a member of my father's security team casually strolled up behind him and shot him 27 times until he died. After my father was killed, there were tens of thousands of clerics who took to the streets in favor of the blasphemy laws and to praise my father's assassin and to condemn my father for being a blasphemer.
This guy is the killer.
Every year since 1999, the United Nations passes a defamation of religions resolution, which I very strongly believe is essentially a global blasphemy law. Together with Human Rights First, I spoke with ambassadors and dignitaries at the Human Rights Council in Geneva, and for the first time in 11 years, this global defamation of religions resolution was not voted on. My collaboration with Human Rights First it's been a partnership and it's been a friendship. After being in this stifling climate back home, it showed me that there's an entire world out there who felt compelled to take action to prevent such acts from happening in the future. And it showed me that with Human Rights First, I have an international support system of kind people who genuinely care, who are working hard to make a difference, and who have met with great success in their work so far.
What about his son?
He's abducted. We are very short of time, so I have to just see what I can say. I'm just saying that these stories are personally very emotional for me, because in the span of 10 years of my career, I have been on live broadcasts of whatever has been happening in Pakistan. I was on the panel when Salman Taseer was shot, when they were taking him, and we did not know whether he is alive or dead. I went through those emotional moments because he was one of my favorite politicians. I was on the panel when Benazir Bhutto was assassinated. And I think if I say that in my entire career, the most emotional transmission that I have done is the assassination of Benazir Bhutto. We knew that she was killed. She got a bullet over here, and we knew that she was killed. And in the newsroom, we got time to consume the news. But we were not supposed to let it out because she was somebody of such a charisma that we needed time for people to, absorb that news. We released the news after 2 hours. We were supposed to hide it for 2 hours. We wanted to contain it. And even in that time, I remember when I was telling my anchor on his talk back, I was at Geo at that time, and I was doing the English broadcast, which was going in Canada, America, and Dubai Beam, the English broadcast. And so I remember when I spoke to Uwais Afridi, was the anchor, and I spoke to him, and Uwais asked me, Noreen, are you sure that I should say it? Like thrice, he asked me, are you sure I should say it? Are you guys sure about it, that she is dead? Because nobody was able to believe that she is dead. It was like unreal for us. And I remember that there is this countdown that comes to you from the MCR. There is a master control room and there is a program control room. I'm the program control room. The master control room is running an advertisement, and it's counting back from 10 to 0. And from after that, I will play one ID, which is like 5 seconds, which is the breaking news bumper, and then I will tell my anchor to announce. So I'm getting this countdown. I still have it in my head, like 10. Noreen, stand by. We're coming to you. You have to announce Benazir Bhutto is dead. 9, 8, 7, 6, 5. And I'm telling Uwais, are you okay? Uwais? And he's like, I can see a man with tears in his eyes, and he's trying to control himself. And I have the bumper 5-second ID in front of me, and I'm saying, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, say it. And he would not say it. So it was the most difficult transmission for me. But like these stories become really personalized when you have seen them, you have been through them, you have seen watched every moment of it. I have one more story, and after that, like the presentation is finished, one more story I will share with you. This woman, Asma Jahangir, she is one of the founding members of the Human Rights Commission of Pakistan, which works for the rights of minorities, democracy rights, and everything that comes in the realm of human rights. She is also the president of Supreme Court Bar Council, and she has been very active because now she must be 60 years old. She has been active through all those eras of when we had dictatorship governments. In this clip that I'm going to show you, she is going to speak about the time of a dictator's time and how she ran a campaign of resistance at that time, personally.
Things that are happening in the world today. The first is the priority given to national security. Today, every country, whether it's the West or the East, progressive or non-progressive, their policies are being led by the intelligence departments rather than by politicians themselves. And that's a great challenge for all of us activists to ask, how is it that we have no leadership in the world? How is it that leadership is visionless in the world? And I ask this because though I have been an activist from the day I was born, because my father was in opposition and was in and out of jail, so I have learned the words fundamental rights and adult franchise before I knew my little poem in nursery school. But when I became a lawyer, that was the time that the most lethal dictator, Ziaul Haq, had taken over our country. He was patronized by the West because he was the leader of the so-called jihad industry, which now you are suffering also in the West, but we suffered it even before September 11th. For us, every single day was September 11th, ever since Ziaul Haq took office in Pakistan. For us, We had never seen public flogging before, and we saw it then. For us, we had never experienced laws which said that people should be stoned to death and their hands should be amputated. But we did see it with Ziaul Haq. And we had all the Western leadership backing this great jihadist to the cost of the people and the women of Pakistan. And I recall that at that time, we were frustrated young women because we saw these laws coming where a woman who was raped could be charged of extramarital sex, where a blind girl was accused of extramarital sex, given punishment, where a young woman was flogged publicly in Karachi, and we seethed and we said, over our dead bodies will our daughters go through this. So there were 150 of us who decided to demonstrate against Ziaul Haq's Islamization. There had been demonstrations earlier, but political one, who should come to power and who should not come to power. But nobody challenged Islamization of Ziaul Haq. My father was alive at that time, and when I said we are going tomorrow for a demonstration, he knew what we were up against. And he said, oh my God, really? But he moved behind the scenes to make sure that we would get international attention if something happened to us. And true enough, we were beaten badly, slapped around, picked up, thrown in the police van. And the more repression that was on us, the more our resolve. And we went into the police station and we said, we are not getting out of this police station till the Interior Ministry does not publicly apologize to us, and we want to hear it on radio. Because we will not allow one dictator to ruin a whole generation of our women. And I believe, I've worked with women for years and decades in my country. I believe that women in my country are the hidden pearl. They have so much courage. They tell you off, even as a lawyer. I remember a woman coming with 5 or 6 kids, and I said, you really want a divorce? What are you going to do with these kids? You really want it? And she looked at me and she said, I've been sitting outside, hearing all the training programs that your office is giving of women who were killed in violence during marriage. Give me one example where a woman has died because she was divorced. And I couldn't. I mean, these are the voices of wisdom that you get.
I love this woman.
So
she's amazing.
So my presentation aimed to show you that, like, right now you hear only about war and terrorism about Pakistan. But these are the people who are there in Pakistan, and they are the faces of resistance who are resisting the war that we have been caught in, which is the war of the region. So I don't know like how much did you understand this. I tried my best. At the end, because it's a very somber note, I want to leave you with a video which is from Pakistan's largest fashion week that we have in Karachi. It's called Fashion Pakistan Week. So this is from the last year. You can just see. And then that's it.
Ladies and gentlemen, presenting Nida Asghar.
The music is from Balochistan, the big side of the province that I was from. We use this one. This is the dress that I wore in the GLF. Thank you. Questions?
By the way, Carolyn is joining us. She is one of 2 or is it 3 hosts?
We'll take it.
Noreen. Thank you for joining us,
I'm sorry.
Carolyn.